Hello, everybody. I am Loretta Chen, co-founder and CEO of Smobler. It's a made-up word of two Swedish words, sma, which is small, and blur, small furniture. I'm really humbled to be on stage with other illustrious founders that come before me, come after me, and I am distinctly aware I only have 9 minutes and 28 seconds. So let's get started. On how we turn crisis into opportunity, and eventually towards creating a metaverse for good. Now, our origin story, like all good stories, started with COVID-19. I was already in Hawaii after an illustrious career in the creative media. And at 45, I was focused on going back on one of my first loves, which is education. I was working as a professor in a state university, creating leadership and economic empowerment opportunities for women in depressed neighborhoods, working with the native Hawaiians and incarcerated population. I was also rescuing and raising 25 cats. And then, of course, the pandemic struck. I remember I was giving a keynote address to the state educators in the Hawaii Convention Center in March 2020 on the importance of digitalizing education and virtual engagement when news of the earliest lockdowns started circulating. And this is when we didn't have a vaccine. And I was watching bodies being pulled out of New York City flats and into makeshift morgues converted from ice trucks. We all remember that, right? And at the same time, two major fault lines were emerging. Creatives were deemed non-essential. My ex-staff and now co-founder, Ruel, has an autistic son. He was axed from his job and he was down to his last $70. And secondly, businesses had to find a way to get digital or risk being completely obsolete. So I thought very keenly on the impact of COVID-19 on creators and their families. I knew livelihoods would be challenged, so the idea of being able to create opportunity to provide and build spaces for digital ownership in the open metaverse appealed greatly to me instinctively. And this was a real game changer about Web3, the ability to own and control our virtual assets and data, thus leading to greater economic freedom and digital democracy. And if necessity is the mother of invention, then the pandemic is the biggest catalyst for revolution. And so I started to ask, if not now, then when? And if not me, then who? So with that, we founded Smobler, and we've never looked back. And our team of 2 has expanded to 50, and we're headed into Series A. And Smobler has also enabled my now co-founder to visit the Philippines and reunite with his mother, whom he has not embraced for 9 years. Actually, it's 10 years. No entrepreneurship journey is rosy. And unlike most technopreneurs that you meet today, I didn't have a tech background, and neither did Ruel. So we had to focus on our core strengths as a duo, as we didn't have abundant resources. He only had $70, and I have 25 cats. And for me, thank you, and I was great at human communication, so I hope you tell me after. Creating, connecting, communicating. And I started with B2B brand building and storytelling, as I am doing now, while Ruel took on the architectural design and gameplay. And because we started with so little, $70 and 25 cats, we eschewed hype projects and focused on building an enterprise-grade ecosystem to the Sandbox open metaverse. And so we onboarded legacy brands, banks like DBS, you see here, governments, Government of Bhutan, nonprofits, the food bank, and we formed a partnership with institutes of higher learning to co-create curriculum on digital asset creation, ownership, and financial literacy. We also launched a $1 million scholarship fund for interested scholars and talents in emerging markets. And as we grew, it became clearer and clearer to me that our North Star was our desire to inject meaning and purpose into the Web3 space and the metaverse space. And so coupled with a sense of altruism, just like Philip right there, naivete and bravado to support my friend, his family, and the community around me, I soon found our raison d'etre, our ideals of inclusion, diversity, equity, access, love, and sustainability. And with that, our Metaverse for Good initiative was born. Up till today, our belief in creating a metaverse for good empowers us to work consciously, mindfully, to engage all in this nascent space. Today, our company's ideals reflect the zeitgeist of the times, but in hindsight, even in the 90s, yes, I was back then in the 90s, when I first started out, I was fundamentally always asking how we could make our communities more inclusive. And this was coupled with the fact that I witnessed how many of my creative friends were unable to make a living in the arts or creative industries because of societal pressures and or the lack of economic viability. There were no jobs when I was growing up. If you're a creator or if you're differently gifted, I remember having to take on many part-time jobs just to fulfill my love and work in the performing arts. You can ask my new friend Caesar here, whose dad had to do the same thing. And this is exactly why I saw opportunity in the open metaverse, because of its propensity to create creative communities across geographical boundaries. The space we inhabit today is unlike Web 1, where power and decision-making rested heavily on older generations, young and young at heart generations, with centralized authority, media, and financial platforms. And I can speak to this so vividly because I was once told off by a power that be, who was much taller than me, at the Esplanade when I was directing 251, you can Google that, a play based on porn star Annabelle Chong, that I had to toe the line or have my funding cut. And he did this on opening night in front of an audience just like you, but of course, the wonderful thing is that my play sold out in 8 days. And the irony that one of the core themes of the play was censorship was never lost on me. And a funny anecdote, I was also once asked by the bureaucrats to remove a word from Eve Ensler's titular play, The Vagina Monologues. So I cheekily asked the Board of Censors, which word would you like me to remove? The or monologues? The youths are often always early adopters of technology. Thank you. Keep it going. They also tend to be more idealistic. They have desire to make change, to right the wrongs of our predecessors. And as such, it's so important to harness this engine of change, as the youth today do have the power to effect change. It is greater awareness to enable value creation towards a conscious stakeholder capitalist model instead of a value extraction, shareholder takes all sort of approach. There is a greater call towards community building, and these youths will turn adversity into opportunity. And that is why we need all of you, every single one of you, young at heart, Philip, Caesar, Eric, daring change makers, entrepreneurial actors, to proactively create an ecosystem of funding, of support, of mentorship, of representation, of inclusion, to create a metaverse for good. And my final anecdote takes us back to my 24-year-old self reading my PhD in UCLA. My partner and my first love had suicided. It was a longer, much more tragic affair, but suffice to say, it changed the trajectory of my life. You see, in my youth, I could not make sense of grief, which today I understand as love with nowhere to go. And so I went in search of answers, like Siddhartha on a quest for enlightenment. And on one such occasion, I met a Jewish physician who spoke to me in Mandarin, and he said, 危机的机和机会的机是同样一个字. And this means that the Chinese word for crisis and opportunity are one and the same. And so with that, I packed my proverbial bags and headed off to Cambodia, and I volunteered to teach at a sex traffic workers camp. And the girls there ranged from ages 8 to 18, and some were younger. And I remembered asking them, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? And to my surprise, the girls proffered, doctor, teacher, nurse. And of course came the next question, why? Because we want to save the world, echoed the young girls. Now I looked at these young girls in their eyes and saw that they had courage and hope. And these were young girls who had been abducted and abused, and yet they have the audacity of hope. And I recall what Eleanor Roosevelt said, that nobody can make you feel inferior without your consent. And I remembered then that I was healed because I thought I was there to rescue the girls, but the girls had rescued me. So I made a pact with myself to never allow myself to feel inferior, to appreciate that I have agency, because for every child that Madonna, Oprah Winfrey, Angelina Jolie rescues, Millions go unrescued or are trapped in war zones. So I tell myself that my ability to choose is built on the backs of millions of boys and girls and men and women who will never have the ability to choose. And I began to see my right to choose as a privilege. And that's not to say I don't make mistakes. I make mistakes every single day, but I would take accountability for my mistakes because that is a privilege. And I tell myself every day that I'm grateful to be alive, to have agency, to have the ability and agency to be a founder. And I share that privilege, that agency, and power with all of you. Know that you can turn every crisis into an opportunity for good. Know that, do that, be that. You heard it right here at the Founders Peak. I'm Loretta Chen, co-founder and CEO of Smobler. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you.